We know that despotic forms of government dismiss the significance and value of individual human lives. Today, we'll explore some implications of a government's dismissal of the right to life. Brian Johnston is the Western Director of the National Right to Life Committee. He has served in many capacities while advocating for innocent lives, as California Commissioner on Aging, as Chairman of the California Pro-Life Council, on the board of the National Legal Center for the Medically Dependent and Disabled. And now here's our host, Brian Johnston.
Welcome back to Life Matters, your program on life, on culture, and the very real battle of ideas. And you're in a battle whether you know it or not. If you're not participating, if you're not thinking about the ideas that are coming at you, then you've already lost, because those ideas aren't always the right ones. They're packaged in a way, usually in emotional ways, to cloud your thinking. So in Life Matters, we examine in depth some of the issues that really matter, the issues of life. And we most of all examine the right to life, which is a legal assertion about the relationship between human beings and their government. That's right. The right to life is not a gift of the government. It's inherently yours. It's been given to you by your Creator, and it's the job of government, of a just government, to secure those rights. That's why governments are instituted. So this is a very important idea, and it's an idea that is the foundational element of the American founding and of all other countries that have sought to emulate freedom. And many countries around the world literally look to America for their ideas regarding good government and freedom. So this program is dedicated to the right to life, to the culture that emanates from that life, and to the battle of ideas. We're a radio program and a podcast. Our radio show is heard through most of California. We want to welcome our latest affiliate in the Imperial Valley of California, KGBA Radio 100.1. And we're appreciative of their work there in the Imperial Valley. We also are a podcast. And if you're hearing us by podcast, I'd like you to subscribe. If you haven't subscribed already, if you're on iTunes, go ahead and subscribe. If you're hearing this through some other form, subscribe through that favorite podcast delivery. But on iTunes, I know you can subscribe and then rate the show. We appreciate that because we're here for you to help and to equip you. Life Matters is a program that's not dedicated necessarily to the news about the right to life. There is a lot of news all the time, and I want to keep on it, and so do you. But news can be ephemeral. Ephemeral means information for right now, and that's literally what news means, what's new. And that can often distract us, not that those things aren't important. But our program likes to go a little bit deeper. We're going to talk about some news right now in California, but we're going to do it in the context of the deeper issues. The deeper issues that are enduring and that we need to master. Today's program is specifically dealing with words. They can be cheap, especially in politics. And we're seeing that all the time. You already knew that. California right now, we're speaking in May of 2018, California is facing a very contentious election cycle. And it's an excellent time. We're going to examine that race, the race for governor. But we're going to examine it in light of the principles. I have happened to dealt with many campaigns and many elected office holders and many candidates for office. And you see certain things that tend to come up. And that's where the issue of words really matters. We communicate with words, but unless you double check, as Ronald Reagan used to say, he was quoting a Russian proverb, trust but verify. If someone tells you that they believe in something, that's nice. But sometimes belief can be very vague, and people can use words in a very emotional and vague way, and you find out the hard way that they meant something entirely different. That the commitment they make to you verbally isn't really all that solid unless you know how to verify. So we're going to talk about how in the Right to Life movement, how we really work to verify and ascertain who really is the pro-life candidate, the best candidate for that office. It's very tough. We like to get down to the person that should be elected. And There's a way to do that. We're going to talk about that today on Life Matters. We're going to talk about it in the context of California, in the context of gubernatorial election. That's the highest office holder in the state, the chief executive office, if you will, of the state of California or of any of the states. But in point of fact, this is an issue that applies to every election. And so in Life Matters tradition, if you happen to hear this later on a podcast, even though we're talking about an election in the year 2018, the principles we're outlining here are very important. And as we go into them, I'm going to explain in context first other elections, historical figures, names that you know, people that I've met and dealt with, that we had to really dig deep to find out what the issues really were. You're going to find that very interesting because they happen to have been California governors. And we'll tell you those stories of previous California governors. I've been fortunate enough to have met several, to have worked with some of the best. And we'll talk about them. And then some of the tragedies of California's governorship. Again, California, a significant state in our nation, and the policies in California often reverberate across the nation and around the world. But the principles we're going to talk about, principles you need to understand for every election, for every political battle, because politics is in fact the battle of ideas. The people you elect will put into place laws, and laws are merely ideas that are enforced. And if you don't understand that, then you're going to get some very bad ideas enforced on you. As we're already seeing in the United States, in many other parts of the world, human beings are being killed under the laws of their respective nations. Human beings, whether they be babies in the womb, or in many places, elderly, sick, disabled, or sometimes just depressed, people killed by doctors legally. These are very evil ideas, and in fact, these very ideas have been condemned by Western civilization. It was the reason the Nuremberg trials took place. Nuremberg trials were not about Germany invading Poland or France or any other parts of the war. The Nuremberg trials were declared to be crimes against the German people. The German government was supposed to protect the lives of its own citizens. Instead, it selectively killed entire classes of human beings, sometimes for their race, but often because of their physical condition. And that abuse of that authority was called a crime against humanity, because the purpose of law is to protect those that can't protect themselves. So this is really an important issue, and a lot of people miss what the real right to life is about. We want to equip you to understand that so you can stand for civilization, so you can stand on behalf of those that can't stand for themselves, that you can speak up for them when they're being pushed or manipulated to death, that they're being taken away to death. You have a responsibility, if you're a member of society, to not let these things happen. So we're going to talk about why politics is important, why every election is important, and specifically why this upcoming California election is important. We're going to dig into the words used. We're going to show you how to do it. And that's here, coming up on Life Matters.
Life Matters continues after this.
Life Film Fest is the creative outreach in Hollywood that's changing Hollywood and the culture. There's many films you've already seen that actually had their start at Life Fest in Hollywood. But more than that, we work with people throughout the industry who want to creatively bring the message of life, creatively impact the culture so that hearts and minds of our fellow citizens understand the depth of what the right to life really is. Be part of Life Fest Film Festival and make a difference.
Go to lifefilmfest.com. And now back to more Life Matters with Brian Johnston.
Hey, well, welcome back now to Life Matters. We're talking about a deep issue, and that is the issue of politics. And I hear a lot of pro-life people say, I don't care about politics. I just care about babies. If I can just help those moms and get some diapers for the kids that aren't killed in abortion, that's my pro-life work. That's what the pro-life movement's all about. If that's how you feel, that's a good thing. That's a work of corporal mercy or helping someone. I'm not going to condemn that. But if you say that's all there is to this right to life, you don't understand what's at stake. You, in fact, are very naive if you think that politics should be ignored because it doesn't feel good. So I'm going to talk right now about why sometimes it doesn't feel good. Right now in California, just by way of example, we're going through a political storm. This is a storm. There's so much mud being flown and thunder and lightning and accusations right and left. Why does this happen in politics? It's uncomfortable. Something's not right. And here's what you may not understand. You may not understand why this is happening because you don't understand where you live. You don't even know your own geography and its significance politically. All politics can be tough. And that's why we're talking about these issues now, so you understand. But I have to tell you, in California, if you live in California and you don't understand why this is happening, then you're just naive to your own geography. What if you moved to International Falls, Minnesota, and you were there one summer? It's a neat place. Up there on the border, it's beautiful lakes all around. And then in the winter, you got hit by an incredible, it's incredible. We're talking 25, 30 degrees below zero. And you just complain about the weather. I didn't like this. I don't like this place. I don't like the storm of politics. It's because you don't understand where you live. You're in a battle of ideas wherever you are. But California is somewhat extraordinary. It's the most influential of all the states. And in fact, the California Governorship, ever since the 50s at least, has been one of the most powerful state-elected positions in our nation. Eventually, it does impact the whole nation. The governor of California in the 1950s, Earl Warren, went on to be the Chief Justice of the United States Supreme Court. He wielded heavy, heavy power over our nation. The next, as I mentioned earlier, I met his heir. The next governor was Pat Brown, really an icon of the Democrat Party. He wasn't pro-life, just so you know. And you all know his son, Jerry Brown, who more than any other California governor, again, California is very influential. Jerry Brown never made the jump into national politics, but the influence of Jerry Brown has been great. He's been there for 16 years, more than any other human being in history. He's appointed judges that are terrible judges, and that's the enduring legacy of any chief executive, whether it be a state or even a territory. Governors get appointments, and those appointments outlive that governor. So that's the enduring legacy you got to watch for. Governorships are important, but California governorships even more so. Jerry Brown appointed Rose Byrd. Just terrible. See, it's the judgment of people. In this battle of ideas, the people that end up in office, if they have a frame of reference that isn't found in natural law and the laws of nature and of nature's God, as our founder said, then they come up with their own framework, their own rules. And there's some very common rules of thinking. We've talked about them before on this program. But if you aren't able to discern how these people are thinking and get some idea of that, then you might have the wrong ideas put into office. And as I said, this whole program today is to help you understand in every election these implications. And we're looking right now at the governor's race. We're going to get in today's race, but you need to know yesterday's races. I've met every governor since and worked with some. As I said, they're very good. To be honest, Ronald Reagan, all of you know he was an extraordinary man. I didn't know him as well as his chief of staff, who befriended me when he had left the presidency, Judge William Clark, who had been chief of staff for Reagan. He had been national security advisor for President Reagan. He had been Secretary of Interior. He's the man considered spiritually closest to Ronald Reagan. He went out of his way to befriend me. Ronald Reagan admitted that he made a mistake as governor on life, and the rest of his political career, he made it a point to stand up for innocent human lives as a foundational element in society. So Ronald Reagan was extraordinary, but somebody else that doesn't get the credit, and we miss him already, and that's George Deukmejian, a very humble man. And George Deukmejian, as an assemblyman, was pro-life, as an attorney general was pro-life, and as governor was pro-life, because he had the right frame of reference. I remember seeing him interviewed in the K Street Mall in a gotcha interview when abortion was an issue in the budget. And he was attacked about women's rights. And he thought for a moment and humbly said, well, maybe that's the case, but isn't there a human life involved? I have to think about that. That's the kind of person you want in office. George Duke Machen, a great man, a very humble man. What an honor to meet him. Pete Wilson was a Republican, but he actually, when he was in the U.S. Senate, had been pro-life. When he became governor, his life had changed. He openly defied the right to life, and that was a very sad governorship. But you know some of the other ones. I'll tell you quickly about Arnold Schwarzenegger. I met Arnold when he was running, and Arnold said, I am pro-life, I am Catholic, I go to St. Monica's church in Santa Monica. Very pro-life, very Catholic. And I hate to tell you, those of you who have listened to our program before, you know that the right to life, I actually become distrustful when people insist on framing it as a religious issue. They're often hiding actually dealing with the issue. It's their way to cover it up. I'm not saying that all religious, hey, I'm a huge fan of your faith if you believe that God made you. That's a great beginning. But we're talking about the policies of a nation, and we need to make sure that people understand these policies and that it's not just words. Arnold Schwarzenegger gave words. By the end of his sad and tragic governorship, he actually had hired Susan Kennedy, who was a pro-abortion leader in California, leader of California NARAL. She actually had been chief of staff for the state Democrat Party. So somebody saying they're pro-life when they're running is really not enough. You have to double check. You have to be sure. We won't have time today, but people ask me, yeah, but what if they lie? What if they lie? I understand that. And you have to be able to dig down to see what the truth is. That takes more than just reading political literature that comes in your mail. So I want to go on. I could talk about some other governorships that you'd know, but I knew you'd know these. And now in California, we're dealing with the governor's race. It's a storm. This is a blizzard. And people in California, friends of mine, are overwhelmed with the things they hear. Well, you better expect that. And you better be able to weather this storm because it's the battle of ideas. And if you are just complaining about this political weather and not getting down to the bottom line ideas, you're going to get taken. So many of you know that the California Pro-Life Council has endorsed John Cox, and there's a reason we've done that. California is a huge state and a state that needs radical change. John Cox, in many ways, is very much like Donald Trump. People don't like Donald Trump. I'm sorry, they don't like his personality. I'm not here to justify his personality. I'm not here to justify Donald Trump's other issues even. I do know on life that he has made commitments, and he has kept them, and that's critically important. He's come from outside of the swamp, the political swamp, and Donald Trump wants to change it, and so does John Cox. And he has the resources to do so without being bought. John Cox has made commitments to pro-life policies, very specific commitments to very specific policies, and especially to appointing pro-life judges. As I said, that's what you really are looking for in a governor or a president. Who are they going to give you that lives long after them? So this is critically important that you understand what's really at stake. Don't be seduced by personalities. Don't be seduced by the words that candidates use. You must be able to assess them. You must make sure that you're not being bought off like the rest of the sheep that the candidates are trying to seduce into voting for them. Be able to dig down. Again, the purpose of our program is to help you and to teach you how and where to dig and why, because lives are at stake. When we come back, we're going to go into great detail now on the governor's race in California, but it's not about personality. It's not about feelings. It's not about people's haircuts. It's about life. We'll be right back.
Life Matters continues after this.
You know, you're pretty amazing. The reason I can say that is America's founders said that about you. That's right. They said that every human being is created by a creator and given rights by that creator. Those rights are not given by the government. It's the government's job to protect those rights. And the very first and most important is the right to be alive, the right to life. If you want to be involved in the national effort, go to nrlc.org.
And now back to more Life Matters with Brian Johnston.
Okay, well, welcome back to Life Matters. We're your program on life, on culture, and the very real and present battle of ideas. And we're in that battle right now in California. We're talking about the California governor's race. As I said, we don't get into personalities. We have to look at the real facts of this battle and what's at stake. The first thing you have to recognize now in California is we are living under what's known as the top two, or the jungle primary. That means that only two people after the primary are going to survive and end up on the ballot. It's not unlikely that that could be two Democrats fighting it out in the fall for governor. You know, the swamp wants that. You know, the deep state wants that. They control the Democrat Party. They buy them off. There's people who influence Sacramento just like Washington. They love to buy them off. They have actually been part of the problem. You've heard it referred to as the swamp. This top two primary means if Republicans don't hang together, they easily could take votes from the leader, and that leading Republican would not have enough votes to be in the top two. In November, you could end up with two of the worst candidates, the former mayors of San Francisco and Los Angeles, Democrats, radical leftist pro-abortion Democrats. And on other policies, they've destroyed their cities. They've been actively involved in helping to destroy the policies of California. That's what will happen if we divide the Republican vote. So I have to tell you a sad story now. I didn't want this to be so sad. It's unusual that we have candidates running for office that beg to be called pro-life, that are willing to lie in order to be called pro-life. And so this is kind of an extraordinary turn of events. But a minor assemblyman, again, an assemblyman represents 1/80th of this whole state. 1/80th. It takes millions, tens of millions, to run for statewide office. This gentleman does not have that. He doesn't have a tenth of that. In fact, he's very poorly funded, and yet something's going on. I have to tell you about it. Assemblyman Travis Allen is termed out. That means he can't run for assembly anymore. And in the swamp, in Sacramento, there's a phrase. It's either out or up. And so very often, these politicians have to move up the ladder. And they face the prospect of having to go back to the private sector, to the private real world otherwise. Travis Allen is facing that. He's decided he's not going to move up. He's going to go for the top. And again, he doesn't have these assets. It's kind of odd, but he's going to throw his hat in the ring. And one of the things that Travis has done, he's made it a point of being a taxation Republican. And I'm going to tell you the documented facts now. He has not been pro-life. In fact, throughout his assembly career, he had one of the greatest reputations of running away from the life issue. I'm not saying he was pro-abortion. Some people mischaracterize what we're saying. No, that would take guts. It would take real guts for him to be a pro-abortion Republican. No, he didn't show those guts. He literally made a reputation of avoiding the life issue more than any other Republican. If you go back to the votes, the Democrat Party controls California. They're pro-abortion. Every year they honor Roe v. Wade. Well, every Republican says no to that, at least one way or another. Travis Allen is the only Republican that every year took a pass. He abstained in opposing Roe v. Wade. Well, that's odd for a pro-life hero. Oh, but there's more. I actually was told in 2014, and so was Assemblywoman Shannon Grove, a pro-life hero. We had an event where Travis Allen specifically said he did not want to be known as a pro-life assembly member. That was stunning to me. He did want to hang out. He did not want to be known as a pro-life assemblyman. You see, that's not uncommon, because sometimes there are Republicans that know, oh, this is a controversial issue. I just don't want to get tagged with it. That was Travis Allen's reputation in Sacramento, but there's more. You see, there were votes, some very important votes, and one happened in 2014. Right after that event, there was an important vote on SB 926. And this was a bill opposed by all pro-life organizations. This was a bill that actually would license paying young women for their eggs. So those eggs would be used in human experimentation. Now, we don't have time to get into this, but you know that women actually have a very limited number of eggs. So this would go to young women in college, and they want to get their rent paid. Well, we'll buy your eggs from you and use them for the good of science, for human experimentation. This was a very dark bill. In fact, many feminist groups, the smarter ones, came out against it too, because this harms women directly. This is their future. In fact, Jerry Brown even vetoed this bill for that reason. But let me tell you this. Travis Allen stood out like a sore thumb. He supported this bill, SB 926 in 2014. He doesn't tell you about that. But every single pro-life Republican was clear. There was powerful presentations on the floor. He voted anyways against life. Travis Allen misrepresents who he is. He's got other interests. When he ran, he bought the Tea Party list, and he found out the hard way that those people aren't merely into taxes. Even though the Tea Party implies that, many, if not most Tea Party people I know are very pro-life. So he began running into that at every meeting he had. These people would say, "Are you pro-life?" He desperately had to say, yes, he was. He's always been pro-life. That is simply not true. And I really wish I didn't have to get dragged into this, but Travis Allen is misrepresenting himself as being pro-life. It is not true. You can go to our website. You can look at his actual voting record. He has not signed the commitment that Donald Trump and John Cox has signed. He's refused to sign it. Several legislators withdrew and demanded he not use their name because he refuses to sign specific pro-life commitments, including the appointment of judges. John Cox has signed that. We're deeply alarmed now because he is trying to seduce people, if you will, with his language and his posturing to really split the Republican vote. There's a good chance if he stays in that he actually would prevent there being a Republican even on the ballot in the fall. This is insidious. This is the storm that you're in right now, the political storm. If you don't recognize the geography and importance of California, then political storms are just irritating to you. You don't like that weather. You'll ignore it. You won't dig down to see why this battle is taking place. We want you to understand why this battle is taking place. This is the battle for life. This is the battle for who will decide the laws in the most important state in our nation. And it's a very real battle. The swamp of California, Sacramento, has a lot of deep state players, and they're backing Mr. Travis Allen. Tells you something. Every slate I've gotten that has Travis Allen on it, look at that slate carefully. There's an asterisk. And what that says is that someone is paying for him to be promoted. There's one that says it's for tax watchdogs, and it has Travis Allen with an asterisk, and it has the rest of them are mostly Democrats that are actually quite tax and spend Democrats, but they paid to be called. They paid to be sent into your mailbox and called guardians of the tax code. This is so insidious. Make sure that you're not seduced by those who misrepresent themselves. California has so much at stake in this primary. Please understand how politics really works and why the right to life is such an important issue in the battle of ideas, in the battle of politics.
Life Matters is a production of the California Pro-Life Council, the state affiliate of National Right to Life.